Welcome to Sales, Tax, and More, your go-to resource for all things state tax related. Now, here is your host, Michael Fleming.
Hi, Mike Fleming here, founder of Sales, Tax, and More, and today's host of the Sales, Tax, and More podcast, where we talk about everyone's favorite subject, which is, of course, sales tax. Today, we're going to be discussing sales tax registrations. It's actually more complicated than you would think. And our guest is our very own Krista Sleeper. But before I introduce her, I wanted to introduce Sales Tax and More. We are a full-service consulting and solutions firm. We're comprised of CPAs, former DOR staff, and other individuals with years of specialized knowledge. We offer consulting and research, registrations, sales tax returns. We do audit defense, and as our name says, a whole lot more. So, Krista, to give her a brief introduction, is our Director of Special Projects, as well as registrations, and is affectionately known as the firm mom. She takes care of all of us. She's a graduate of Texas A&M, has been married to her husband, Lance, for 28 years. And she's got two sons. One of them is in the Coast Guard, and the other will be a senior this year. Lots of hobbies, but our two big passions are sports and cooking. And no, Krista, we're not going to be adding any sports or cooking questions today. So,
I asked.
You want to say a quick hello?
Hey, out there, and yeah, that kind of does sum me up pretty well. There's a lot of other hobbies too, but we don't have that kind of time today. So,
okay. And Krista's also our go-to person. So if we have something new that we've not done before, we call that a special project, and Krista gets it done. So let's talk about registrations, though.
Okay.
A lot of people think that registrations are easy, and for some they may be, but we hear these horror stories of people come to us and, either a software company told them to get registered a certain way, or, their CPA told them to register with all of the Secretary of States out there. So we know there are all sorts of mistakes. Mm-hmm. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see when people are trying to register on their own? Oh,
there's so many. People come to us in absolute panic all the time. Clients come to us because, like you said, they've gotten terrible advice. I've seen people getting sales tax advice in Facebook groups. You shouldn't be getting medical tax, any kind of advice in a Facebook group. And a lot of times you can see that the folks giving the advice are trying to gain the business. Some of the advice just make you cringe. And people don't know what they don't know. And so they're just guessing their way through a lot of these things. And sales tax is not something you want to guess your way through. There's too much on the line. You have too much responsibility when you're signed up for the wrong thing. People don't know how to start. So they don't know what tax types they need. A lot of times we see them with the wrong tax types entirely. So now, like you said, now they're obligated because they registered for the wrong tax type. Maybe they're a remote seller and they registered for sales tax. That isn't exactly what they need. They say, oh, I need sales tax. I'm going to check this box because there could be 15 tax types on a registration. States use these same websites to register from everything from motor fuels taxes to aviation taxes, payroll taxes, every kind of tax under the sun, a lot of times pipe through these same sites. So people just look for the box that they think is them. They make a best guess, which a lot of times is wrong, and they end up completely in the wrong area. So they don't have the right tax type, but then that creates obligations, like you said, for Secretary of State. So when you don't need that at all, so now you have extra cost and fees and filing concerns. You've got to get a registered agent. There's a whole lot of things when that could have all been, nullified if you'd have just known what you needed to begin with. So they don't know that. Then the systems themselves, some states, like you said, quick and easy. You could be done in a day, everything's set up. Most are not that way. There's no money in government software. So there's things that can be super old. They don't update. And they could be these really old systems that run really slow. They're not intuitive. They're sometimes the tiniest little type. They'll crowd a whole bunch of choices together. And the terminology is so strange to folks. So they don't know, well, what is this asking me? Well, okay, I'm going to guess. There shouldn't be any guessing. If you don't know something, you should never guess on these registrations. Again, there's too much that could send you in a wrong direction. And when you get to the very end, you're like, well, I didn't sign up for this. Well, you did, because you guessed your way through it. So we see that all the time. And then folks will go down this path. They'll try and do it on their own, and then they get stuck. Then they come to us. Now the FEIN is stuck in the system, which can be undone, but it can be a process with a lot of these states. So some states are easier to work with than others. And so that's what folks have to understand, is every state is its own entire thing. Now, some will use similar technology, but a lot don't. And so what works in one state does not work in another state. What they even call the taxes are different. What the certificates like when they come are called something different. Everything is completely different state to state. So if you do that first one and go, well, that was really easy, I don't know what these folks are talking about, 2 or 3 more down the road, you're going to soon understand what we're talking about. Because if you don't have everything set up perfectly from the get-go, and have all your information at the ready, I mean, down to, you need to know, there's a state in the Midwest that if your corporation, they want to know all your stockholders' home addresses, social security numbers, birth dates, and percentage of shares down to the decimal point. And so if you don't have that to start with, and you like, well, how am I going to get all this? You've got to know to have everything ready before you even start. You've got to be hyper organized. That's another thing too. People don't get organized, or like you said, someone else did the work, didn't get them the information. Now it's a scavenger hunt to piece together what happened. So, I mean, that's some of the things we see a lot, like all the time. Or folks come to us and they don't know the full functionality of the site. They think they're set up and they're not. We see that a lot in Florida and California, especially. So that's one of the first things we look for immediately when a new client comes in that had registrations done before us. We almost always have to go in and finish out that registration.
I've got a follow-up question for you there, but before we jump on, you and I were talking about an example the other day. So for some reason, there are some of the software companies that just can't do certain types of returns. So TaxJar is telling people to go out and register for sales tax in Oklahoma because they can't file a use tax return. Now, is it the seller's use tax or the vendor's use tax?
I believe it's vendor's use tax.
Okay, so the vendor's use tax is what remote sellers should be signing up for. As you were telling me, when you sign up for the vendor's use tax, it's a pretty easy process.
Yeah.
Number one, there's not any registration with the Secretary of State, which comes with a $350 fee. There's not any registered agent that's needed. There's not any income tax that has to be filed a year down the road. And there's not even any fee to get registered for the sales tax.
No,
the
not
vendor's use tax doesn't have a fee. What is it, a $25 fee or?
Oh gosh, off the top of my head,
it's either $20 or $25 fee
like that,
for the sales tax, where there's no fee for the use tax. So what you register for is going to determine what types of returns are filed. Now, you've got a company like TaxJar who, for whatever reason, has chosen not to file the correct returns and are telling people, just go out. It's not a big deal. Just change the registration. But from what you told me, it is a big deal. Look at all these differences here.
There's a lot of differences. Yeah. And again, it's, especially if you're a remote seller again, it can make a difference in how you register. In Louisiana, you can either, do the remote seller, which is direct marketer, and, you have a nice one rate, and you file. But if you don't do that registration correctly, you're going to be to the old, system, or if you're based in Louisiana, you'll have to deal with it anyway. But now you're dealing with all the parishes and filings. And a lot of times it's not a tax, you're calling the sheriff's office. Like, that's who handles it in some of those parishes. So, and it's just, it's not always that simple. And so it's same as Texas has the one rate now. You got to know if you make the criteria to file, but that can make a huge difference in how easy it is to file if you can have that one rate in Texas. So, there's a lot you have to know about. The other thing we see is people don't know how to determine the date to make their effective date. And so, there's a lot of study and things that go into determining that ahead of time. It's not just, throwing a dart at the wall. You've got to know what the state's laws on, when you hit their thresholds, what your data looks like. And in certain states like South Dakota, they want you to register when their law took effect in 11/1/18. And if not, they're going to contact you and you can explain why you're not registering then.
And that's a trick question too,
Mm-hmm.
on the returns, because most of the states say, when did you start selling in our state? But you don't want to put them the date down when your actual sale was. The states are looking for what's your first date of nexus, and those are two entirely different things.
Right.
So, the plain language says one thing, but what the states want is an entirely different thing. And if you put down, when your first sale is into the state, maybe it was a year ago, maybe it was 5 years ago. Well, the state's going to say, thank you very much. Now, please give me all the back tax plus penalty and interest. And you may not have had a responsibility from that date. State can only require you to collect the tax from the date that your nexus actually began. So,
well, and like that, a lot of various websites are so badly worded, and you think, oh, it's just repeating. They don't differentiate very easily on some sites. The dates they're looking when you started your business in your home state versus when you started business in that state. And you can easily put the date, could have been 5-10 years ago that you started your business, in the wrong slot, thinking you're answering it correctly and you're not. And now all of a sudden, like you said, they're wanting 10 years of back returns. And now you've got to contact them and explain, I didn't know what I was doing. And, it's not as easy. And in certain states, they're not very easy to work with. Some are, but some aren't. It can really get you off to a bad start quite easily and have a crazy date. But again, it's having all your ducks in a row before you start. So you need to know your dates, have all your information ready, have a system set up to where these are going to be my username and passwords. This is going to be where I'm going to save all my pins, because you're going to have a ton of pins. You're going to have codes. You're going to have a whole lot of weird one-off numbers. Sometimes they'll need them down the road. Sometimes they're just to get started, but you're going to need them all.
What's an online setup?
So registrations, again, most of the time, depending on the state, are broken down into two sections. So you have your initial registration when you go in and you tell them all your information and this and that. There's a processing time. And right now, a lot of those are delayed because of COVID. Some states are shut down entirely, but there's a processing time. Some is 24 hours, 48. Some take a lot longer. Then you've got to go back and create basically your online account. This is where a lot of folks get into trouble. They don't realize they need to do that. And in some states, again, going back to California and Florida, you have a limited functionality. You can file without doing that. Most folks don't know there's another step entirely because the states don't explain it. You don't know, oh, this is what I've got to do, go request this code, and then I wait a day and I put it in over here. But nowhere is that really lined out very well for folks. So, you've got to be able to set up, though, to go in and to be able to file, to be able to get a lot of your letters. States send stuff to you all the time, but a lot of it gets messed up. They're sending stuff out in bulk mail. It's getting sent wherever. Who knows what they're pulling from their database. So, and we've had clients get stuff sent to home, to work, to, wherever, because they just happen to pull some random address out of the registration somewhere. And there's a lot that goes in there. And then, you have to, there's just so many ways that this all can go crazy. And then you've got to go in and have that online so you can file, check your things. You can message the state. It's actually a handy tool. Most do respond fairly quickly because they know it's you. You've clearly logged in. You can message them. You can check a lot of things. Your frequency can change. You may not get that letter, but if you're checking the letters in your account, you can see that. And that's one of the things you've got to do when you're registering. That's one of the things you've got to keep straight, that when the state gives you your frequency, you've got to record that. If you have something marked as a quarterly return and it's monthly and you've just started, now you're 3 months, you've got all kinds of penalty and interest. You're already starting behind because you made one little error. And that's just one state, one error. It could be thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. And let's, some states give you options, other states don't. Like, I remember we were talking about Indiana,
Hmm.
and, you would think that, at this point, if a state's not going to allow you to file anyway but online, they would combine this online setup and the registration process
No.
together. But, you've got to create a username and password to do the registration. And that's it. That's all you use it for, is the registration. And then when you get all your documents back from the state, you got to go out and create a brand new account. Go out and create a username.
And they're one that sends you a letter with, I can't remember if it's 18 or 20 digit code. And it's in a letter. You can't copy and paste it, everything. You literally have to write down all these numbers and symbols and, 3 times and it locks.
It's the supercalifragilistic code.
It is that is exactly what that code is. So, and again, so even, once you get stuff, some stuff you can do online for online setup, but a lot of it you're waiting on letters. Idaho, you're looking at 6 weeks to get that code every time. There's no other way to get it. They will not give it to you over the phone. They will not give it to you by email. It only comes in the mail. If it gets lost, they'll resend it. But, then you've restarted the clock. So you've got to give yourself enough time when you register to know, okay, this is what I'm planning on filing. Idaho's going to take me 6 weeks.
Right. Now, you mentioned this before. You said, people have to track everything that they're getting back from the states. And sometimes states very efficient. They put everything in one piece of correspondence. Sometimes you get 3 or 4 pieces of correspondence.
Oh, more than that. Yeah.
And, you shared the frustration with the different letter IDs. Each piece of correspondence has a different letter ID on it. So which letter ID are you supposed to enter into the system in order to complete the online setups? So,
yeah, generally any of those first few they'll take. But again, it's important that you have a system to permanently hang on to every one of those letters. We've seen time again when a client comes to us and they're in a mess, like whoever did the registrations, whether it's an employee or whatever, left. We're trying to get a hold of the state on their behalf. We're working with the state. They're like, okay, well, we just need a letter ID off of anything. They don't have any of their original correspondence. They don't have anything like that. If they'd at least had that paper trail, we can cut the discovery time tremendously, and to help them get back on track, get their filing faster. We see, well, I don't know what we did with that. Let me see if I can find that. And that's just the letters. That's one thing. And we're even talking certificates, which you've got to hang on to. And some of these certificates look like a letter. Sometimes it's just a little end of the page at the end of the letter. Sometimes it's on nice, bright yellow paper. They're all over the map. So you've got to really have a very organized system of how you're going to track what you've done and then retain what you've done once it comes to you. And then to know what hasn't shown up. Because sometimes that'll tell you, oh, I didn't do something right. Something's still hung up somewhere. I haven't heard from this state in a very long time. And so you've got to, have a very good system to track exactly where you are all the way along.
All right. So you said a word in there, track. And we actually, when we're doing registrations, we create a cheat sheet for all of our clients.
Yes.
And we call it a tracker. So why don't you share some of the things that we track? And these are actually recommendations that whoever's doing the registrations needs to track these items.
Yeah. So the ones, we will track on our side everything. If it's a digit, if it's a code, if it's a confirmation number, an email, anything, we have record of that. We've got a specialized spreadsheet and each client has their own. And then once we get that done and we're ready to start, updating the client on where we are, they get what we call a shared tracker. And it really is a great tool. So they get a list of all their states, all the state websites, because those do change. Links go bad. And so they will get the newest updated website. So you're not hunting, like Googling, whatever state.
And that's if you want to do your own returns.
Yeah,
that's where
exactly.
That's
but then also you could then go, always, check what's going on. And then it has their username, password. It has the frequency. Again, I can't stress enough how important that frequency is. It has the tax type.
And let's back up one quick second. a lot of people ask us, they say, well, I want an annual filing frequency. In the vast majority of states, you don't get to choose
No, you
your
don't.
filing frequency.
They have standardized thresholds in most states. Now, there's a few where you're registering, you can pick and choose it, but down the road, they can always move it back, and they often do. So, usually if you're under 500 or 499, for a year in sales tax, you're one thing. And then, if you've had hardly any sales at all, you're going to be at least, quarterly. And so, but every state's different, but to try and get annual, it's nothing that you can usually choose. That's assigned to you. It's a number value. And if you think, oh, well, I'll just tell them this really low number when I go in, that'll work for a few months until they actually see your filings come in, and you'll get a letter in the mail that they have on their own adjusted you to a different month. And we see that all the time.
And you don't want it to be too different, because that throws up a red flag, and you don't want to be, too many red flags, and next thing you know, you find yourself on an audit list. So you want to limit the numbers of red flags that you're throwing up. So in a lot of states, in order to be an annual filer, you have to have less than $80 worth of tax collected in a year. And now we're start talking about materiality. My question is, why are you registering at all if you're only collecting $80 worth of tax? The cost of compliance is actually greater than the cost of the registration. So I believe we always need to use common sense. And just because the state says that we should do something doesn't necessarily mean it makes good business sense. We still have to apply common sense here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what else do we have on the tracker? You mentioned all of the usernames, all the passwords, the
security
numbers.
questions. That is what messes people up tremendously. So they come to us, and they're in a world of hurt. And okay, great, we're going to reset your password. What's your security question? I don't know. Like, can you guess? Like, what's your mother's maiden name? I don't know. Somebody else did this. I don't know what it is. So we actually will have that all beautifully laid out for you. Question and answer. Question 1, 2, 3. There's a couple states that even go to 4. And so you will have that. There won't be any more guessing. If something changes over time, we will update that for you. And because it's a Google Doc, it will update it on your end. So for our clients that are STARS clients, whatever, there's Arizona, Michigan, for example, throughout the year, various times of the year, make you update your password. And so we will do that. We'll put it on there. So you'll have the updated password. If you don't update your password in Arizona, they'll lock your account. And for those that aren't used to dealing with Arizona, any account changes of any kind have to be submitted by mail. They don't have a fax on a form. So now you're at, their however quickly they can get things done, you're tied to that. So it could be, we've seen clients come to us that have, been trying for a month to get that untangled, 6 weeks sometimes. So, you just have to wait till they can go. So that's something that we stay on top of. We're always looking to do, and so that you'll have that updated thing in real time, always. In a project, you can monitor where we are on the project. Everything's marked complete as things are completed if we're doing the registrations. So you're like, oh, great, like they're almost done. There's one more state to go. That's fantastic. It's probably Idaho. And so, you really have a peace of mind that all your data is right there. It's everything that you're going to possibly need down to the pin. In certain states like Iowa, you need a BEN number on top of your other stuff. That will be on there. There's these weird one-off numbers in certain states you're going to need, and it'll be on there. And
some things that, we talked about earlier, the tax type, that's something that is going to be on that list. And also, what the tax is also known as, what's the AKA. So, sometimes it's TPT, like the transaction privilege tax in Arizona. So, you're talking to Arizona about the sales tax, and all of a sudden they're talking about a transaction privilege tax, and it gets pretty confusing. So in Hawaii, it's the general excise tax, or the GET. So we put what these taxes are also known by, so that, if you do need to call a state, you're not confused by the lingo that the state's using. So pretty much anything you need to know about your taxes and how to file them is going to be on this tracker. So
exactly.
We encourage everybody to create their own trackers if you're not using someone like us to create the this tracker for you. Now, one big thing, and you mentioned this, we work with a lot of software companies, and people transfer to us because, software company are just a number, or they can't file the right returns or anything else. And they come to us, and no one's bothered to set up the online accounts. So, or vice versa, they're calling us and saying, hey, I'm doing business with Avalara, and they tell me I need these online accounts set up, and whoever did my registrations knew nothing about online accounts. Can you help us with this? So it works both ways. But it's real important, no matter who's doing your returns, you need to do that extra step. You need to go in and do those online setups, and make sure whoever you're contracting with, if you're not doing this yourself, is able to do that for you.
Yeah, you've got to have that, because again, we've seen time and time again that the mail just doesn't get from the state to the person. And if you can't go in and see that you have a message from the state, they don't care that you didn't get it. It'll just say, sorry, we changed your frequency. And then you couldn't tell whoever's doing your returns to change your frequency, because they're not going to know.
But even more basic than that, Christy, you just can't file returns.
No,
so
that's true.
That's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
You've collected the tax, you're ready to file your returns, and now you can't do it. Whether we're doing the returns or Avalara is doing the returns.
Yeah, you've got to have that set up. It's that last step, and it's usually it's a tricky thing, because some of these states, you've got to know somehow to go in and request a PIN 24 hours after you submit it. And then the PIN will come to your email, or they'll send it in the mail sometimes. And like I said, every one of these systems is different. And some of them are pretty old and maybe not the most, intuitive to what you would think would be, how you'd go about setting this up. So, and again, it's very confusing. Like you said, if you're going onto the Hawaii site, well, I'm just looking for sales tax. What is this general excise? That can't be. I know I need sales tax. So again, it goes back to not knowing even what to look for or ask for or sign up for. You're just trying to get through the check boxes that you think look familiar and guess your way through. And that gets a lot of folks into a lot of trouble.
Krista, I know we've talked a lot about workarounds, and this is one of the things that you're absolutely, for all of you out there, Krista's never met her best friend. So she gets things done that I can't even believe she talks to people and gets done. But other workarounds are give us an example of a big workaround that people are going to need to know about.
The one that comes to mind off the top of my head is Kentucky. If you sign up through their normal come sign up with sales tax for us here, you will automatically be shuffled as part of the process into a Secretary of State registration. So with Kentucky, you've got to register on paper and send in a paper registration to avoid that. Like, that's a big workaround. And there's other states that are similar. That, if you really, you're trying to do your best, you've done your homework. I know I need to register here. I legitimately have Nexus and I need to do my thing. And why do I have to register for Secretary of State? And you'll call them and if you register on the website, you have to register for Secretary of State. So Kentucky is always the one that jumps out at my mind the most. And again, that goes back to there, you have a CBI code, you're going to need that down the road. So, there's just a lot going on, but that's one of the ones that is a workaround that you're going to have to go find the paper form, fill that out, believe that can be faxed, fax it in, and to avoid that. But people aren't going to know to do that. They're just not going to know.
Yeah, and when it comes to the Secretary of State, it's not just Kentucky. Most states make it look like you have to register with the Secretary of State. I'll tell you right now, definitively, if you are getting registered because of economic nexus, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever to get registered with the Secretary of State in any state. So sometimes you got to figure out what the workaround is, because the states, these online systems, make it look like you have to do it. But there's a workaround in every state. Sometimes you got to call the state to figure out what that workaround is. And sometimes you just got to, read very carefully and follow those directions there.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, we talked about calling the states. Is there, a benefit in developing a contact at the state?
Oh, hugely. Especially it goes back to our folks that call us and all of a sudden the state has found them. They've gotten a very scary letter with usually a large number on it. And they realized, oh my gosh, somebody in the company registers for sales tax 6 years ago. We didn't even know we had this. So they come to us. We've got to start doing due diligence to figure out what is going on.
How often does that happen where someone gets them registered years ago when they?
It happens. We're dealing with one right now, and that happened. And so we had to go figure out where they were and weren't registered. And so to be able to have that contact in that state and say, hey, can you look this account? Here's the FAN. What do they have? We're trying to get them right. We're going to get them filing again with you guys. Because we're not trying to take advantage of the states. We're actually trying to get them what they're owed that hasn't been able to be filed. And, and they have to, we're kind of an intermediary at that point. And so it's good to be able to call them and say that, and they can get you that information. They might need a power of attorney. No problem. We'll get you a power of attorney. But we're going to figure that out. And they can say, yep, this is what's going on. But you can almost jump the line at times and get things done a whole lot faster than having to start at the very bottom with someone who has no idea what you are. They just happen to answer the phone. And, that's luck of the draw. And some days you can get some great people on the phone randomly in some states, and a lot of times, no. So.
Yeah. So if you're an individual, you're probably not going to be talking to the registration department a whole lot. But if you're a CPA or other accounting professional and you're going to be doing registrations, it's paramount that you develop some of these relationships for yourself. Now, there's a whole lot of difference. What you don't want to do is be calling a state for whether something is taxable or not. You can't take verbal answers on something like that. But how to get a registration done is an entirely different scenario, and that is something where you want to develop contacts at the state. So, and Krista, kudos to you and your team. I know you have a whole network of people out there. Like I said, Krista's never met a stranger. So. Krista, is there anything that surprises you at this point? Anything that you want to share with us as we wrap up here?
I think that how folks go headlong into this unprepared. They've gotten just enough information about sales tax to be dangerous. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so they say, okay, I'm going to take this little piece of misinformation and I'm going to carry it across all my registrations. The states are, by the book, by the numbers. They don't care what your take on it is. The law is what it is, and the statutes are what they are. So you've got to make sure you have done your due diligence, have done your homework, know what you're doing, know where you even need to be registered. We see folks that are registered that don't even need to be registered at times. And then we see that you should have been registered here years ago and you're not. So I think the people take it so lightly. They don't understand that sales tax is its own animal. It has a whole different sense of consequences that come along with it that's different from any other tax type out there, and that it doesn't go away. We see people go to jail over sales tax. There's articles in the paper constantly. So it's not something to take lightly when you're registering. It is something that you need to be absolutely sure about.
And what you said is true, Krista, but let's rein it back in a little bit.
That's the ultimate. But but we do see it. And it's not like the state just shows up out of the blue. There's been a process in years before that sort of thing happens. And
what you usually are going to jail for is tax collected and not remitted, which the states look at as stealing. Or fraud. It's never your money. It's either your customer's money or the state's money. So that's what people are going to jail for. If you make mistakes on registrations, you're not going to jail.
That's not it. But by being registered, you're now on the radar. You're the state knows who you are. They know where you are, and now they're watching you.
Yeah, I'll give you an example there. You talk about people getting registered years ago, and we have this one example. Company got registered, and for 10 years, they were collecting tax, and they had a bookkeeper who kept journaling it back to the general ledger. So they never, ever remitted the tax, and this was California.
Oh.
So this woman got fired, and that's when they realized what was going on. So we had to go to California and do a voluntary disclosure agreement. Voluntary disclosure agreements generally waive not only civil penalty, but any type of additional penalty. So I guess we could tie this in. A registration could end up sending you to jail, especially if you start collecting the tax and not remitting it. But no one went to jail on that. And while you can, I don't want to make that the focus
it's
of
a
the
pretty
conversation.
outlined thing.
Yeah. Well, Krista, thank you for sharing your knowledge today. It's been a wealth of information. And, if anyone needs additional information about registrations, or if you need some help with registrations, Krista is the person to reach out to. We'll supply her email as well as her contact information when we post this. So thank you very much, Krista.
Thanks.
And as always, if anyone needs any help with sales tax whatsoever, please go to our website at salestaxandmore.com. We've got lots of free resources out there. And we're here to assist you in any way that we can.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe and check out all of the resources we have out on the web.